The Legend of Stagecoach Mary. In the vast and dusty plains of Montana, where the prairie grass whispered secrets to the wind and the mountains stood as silent sentinels, there lived a woman whose story has echoed through time like a gentle lullaby across the plains. Her name was Mary Fields, though folks came to know her as Stagecoach Mary, and she was unlike anyone the frontier had ever seen. Mary stood 6 feet tall, a towering figure with strong shoulders that had carried the weight of a difficult life. Born into slavery in Tennessee, she had traveled far from those early days, seeking freedom and purpose in the wild Montana territory. By the time she reached her 60s, when most folks were settling into rocking chairs and quiet afternoons, Mary was just beginning her most legendary chapter. It was 1895 when Mary won the contract to carry the U.S. mail. The job was simple in description, but treacherous in reality. Deliver mail and supplies between Cascade and the mission of St. Peter's, no matter the weather, no matter the danger. The route wound through rugged terrain where wolves howled beneath the stars and winter storms could bury the trail in minutes, but Mary never missed a single delivery. Through blizzards that turned the world white and silent, through spring rains that turned the roads to rivers of mud, Mary pressed on. She drove her stagecoach pulled by sturdy horses who knew her gentle voice and trusted her steady hands. When the snow grew too deep for the horses to pass, Mary would unhitch them, load the mail on her own back, and walk the miles on snowshoes, her breath forming clouds in the frozen air. The people along her route would listen for the sound of her coming, the jingle of harness bells, and the steady rhythm of hooves. Children would run to greet her, and she always had a kind word and sometimes a piece of candy tucked in her pocket. She became as reliable as the sunrise, as constant as the North Star. In the town of Cascade, Mary became a beloved figure. She wore men's clothing, practical and warm, with a hat pulled low against the sun. Some say she smoked cigars and had a quick laugh that could fill a room. She was not afraid to stand her ground, and stories tell of her facing down bandits and wild animals with equal courage. But those who knew her best remember her kindness, the way she looked after the school children and helped neighbors in need. As the years passed and Mary finally retired from the mail route, she opened a laundry service in Cascade. Even then, people sought her out, not just for her services, but for her company. She had become part of the town's heartbeat, a living legend who proved that courage and determination knew no bounds of age or circumstance. On quiet Montana evenings, when the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Mary would sit outside and watch the stagecoaches roll by, carrying others on the route she had made her own. The wind that rustled through the grass seemed to carry her story, spreading it across the prairie like seeds. And now, more than a century later, we remember Stagecoach Mary, not just for the mail she delivered or the miles she traveled, but for the truth she embodied. That strength comes in many forms, that dedication creates its own kind of magic, and that one person's steady perseverance and light way for countless others. So rest easy tonight, knowing that somewhere in the fabric of history, Mary Fields still rides, her stagecoach rolling across the endless Montana sky, delivering not just mail, but a message of hope and resilience that echoes through time, as soothing and eternal as the stars themselves. Sleep well, and let the legend of Stagecoach Mary carry you gently into dreams.
The legend of the phantom cowboy of the Chisholm Trail. Beneath the endless Texas sky, where the stars shine brighter than anywhere else on earth, there once rode a cowboy whose story has become woven into the very fabric of the prairie wind. The Chisholm Trail stretched like a ribbon of dust and dreams, running from the heart of Texas all the way north to Kansas. For years, countless cattle drives followed this path, with cowboys guiding thousands of longhorns across rivers and plains through storms and starlit nights. It was along this trail that the legend of the phantom cowboy was born. His name, some say, was Jesse. Others claim it was James, or perhaps John. The years have softened the details, as legends often do, leaving only the essence of the story, pure and true as morning dew on prairie grass. Jesse was known as the finest horseman on any cattle drive. His horse, a magnificent paint and comet, moved as if it could read his thoughts. Together they could calm a stampede with their presence alone, riding fearlessly into the chaos, while other cowboys watched in wonder. Jesse had a gift with cattle, a gentle way of understanding their fears and guiding them safely onward. One spring evening, as a massive herd was making its way north, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. The air grew heavy and still, the way it does before nature unleashes its fury. The trail boss ordered the men to bed down the cattle early, to sing to them and keep them calm through whatever storm was coming. But storms on the prairie are unpredictable things. Lightning split the sky like cracks in dark glass, and the thunder rolled across the land with a sound like 1,000 drums. The cattle, 3,000 strong, rose as one and began to run, their hooves shaking the earth, their panic spreading like wildfire. Jesse did not hesitate. He swung onto Comet and rode into the darkness, chasing the stampeding herd. The other cowboys followed as best they could, but Jesse and Comet disappeared into the night, swallowed by dust and darkness and the roar of frightened cattle. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. The cowboys managed to gather most of the herd, finding them scattered but safe across the prairie. But Jesse and Comet were nowhere to be found. Days of searching revealed nothing, no trace of the cowboy or his faithful horse, as if they had simply vanished into the storm itself. The cattle drive continued north, as it had to, but something strange began to happen. Cowboys on night watch reported seeing a lone rider in the distance, silhouetted against the stars, watching over the herd. The cattle, usually restless at night, would grow calm when the mysterious rider appeared. Some cowboys swore they heard the faint sound of a familiar song carried on wind, Jesse's favorite lullaby for the cattle. Year after year, as new cattle drives made their way up the Chisholm Trail, cowboys would report the same sighting. A rider on a paint horse, appearing when danger threatened, helping to guide lost calves back to the herd, calming the cattle before storms could spark a stampede. He never came close enough to speak to, but his presence brought comfort and safety. Even after the great cattle drives ended and the Chisholm Trail grew quiet, travelers reported seeing the phantom cowboy on clear nights. He rides still, they say, watching over the land he loved, completing the journey he began so long ago. Some believe he is searching for his herd, determined to see them safely home. Others think he simply cannot leave the trail, so deep was his love for the open prairie and the life of a cowboy. On nights when the moon is bright and the coyotes sing their ancient songs, if you find yourself on the land where the Chisholm Trail once ran, you might catch a glimpse of him. A lone rider on a paint horse, silhouetted against the silver sky, forever faithful to his duty, forever riding through the stars. And so the legend reminds us that some bonds are stronger than time itself. Dedication and love can echo through the ages, and those who give themselves fully to their calling never truly leave the paths they walked. Rest now, and let the gentle rhythm of hoofbeats carry you to sleep, knowing that somewhere out on the prairie, the phantom cowboy still rides, watching over dreamers and keeping the old trails safe beneath the eternal stars. Sleep well, wanderer, sleep well.
A legend of the lost Dutchman's gold. In the rugged superstition mountains of Arizona, where the desert sun paints the rocks in shades of crimson and gold, there lies hidden a secret that has captivated hearts and stirred imaginations for more than a century. The mountains rise like ancient giants from the desert floor, their peaks jagged and mysterious, casting long shadows across the saguaro cacti and sandy washes below. The Apache people considered these mountains sacred, a place where spirits dwelled and mortals ventured at their own peril. But it was here, in this forbidden landscape, that one of the Wild West's greatest legends was born. His name was Jacob Waltz, though everyone called him the Dutchman, even though he actually came from Germany. Jacob was a quiet man with weathered hands and eyes that held secrets. He had spent years wandering the frontier, prospecting for gold in streams and mountains, always searching, always hoping for the strike that would change his life. In the 1870s, Jacob settled near Phoenix, living a simple life in a modest adobe house. He kept to himself mostly, working odd jobs, seemingly just another aging prospector whose dreams had faded like morning mist. But every few months, something curious would happen. Jacob would disappear into the Superstition Mountains for days, or sometimes weeks, and when he returned, he would have gold, rich golden ore of remarkable purity. The townsfolk whispered and wondered. Where was Jacob finding this gold? The superstitions were known to be treacherous and had been picked over by countless prospectors. Yet Jacob, quiet Jacob, seemed to know something no one else did. Jacob never spoke of his mine's location. When pressed, he would simply smile and change the subject, or spin vague tales of landmarks that could be anywhere in those vast, confusing mountains. Some said he had found an old Spanish mine, lost for centuries. Others believed the Apache had shown him a secret place, though why they would share such knowledge remained a mystery. As Jacob grew older, his trips to the mountains became less frequent, but still he would return with gold. He took care of a friend, a woman named Julia Thomas, who had helped him when he was ill. To her, as his health began to fail, he finally spoke of the mine. He described a location marked by a distinctive rock formation, a place where the mountains revealed their treasure to those who could read their signs. In 1891, Jacob Waltz passed away quietly in his sleep, his secrets seemingly dying with him, but Julia Thomas remembered his words, and she went searching. Others followed, hundreds, and then thousands over the years, each one believing they would be the one to find the lost Dutchman's mine. The Superstition Mountains keep their secrets well. The landscape shifts in a desert heat, familiar landmarks seeming to move and change. Canyons wind and twist, leading searchers in circles. The sun beats down relentlessly, and the mountains themselves seem to resist those who come seeking their treasure. Over the years, many have claimed to have found the mine, but none could prove it. Some searchers never returned from the mountains, their fate becoming part of the legend. The Apache spoke of a curse protecting the gold, a warning to those who would disturb the sacred mountains. Whether curse or simply the harsh reality of the desert, the superstitions have claimed many dreamers, but still the legend endures, as beautiful and untouchable as a desert mirage. The lost Dutchman's mine represents something deeper than gold, something about the human spirit and the dreams that call to us. It speaks of mystery and possibility, of secrets hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right person at the right time. On quiet desert evenings, when the sun sets behind the Superstition Mountains and turns them into silhouettes of purple and gold, it is easy to imagine Jacob Waltz making his way down a hidden trail, his saddlebags heavy with treasure, a knowing smile on his weathered face. Perhaps the mine is still there, or perhaps it never existed at all, except in the realm of dreams and stories, and maybe that is exactly as it should be. Some treasures are meant to remain hidden, their greatest value lying not in being found, but in the hope they inspire, the adventures they spark, and the legends they create. So close your eyes now, and let the desert wind carry you to rest. Dream of golden sunsets on ancient mountains, of secrets whispered through the centuries, of treasures both lost and found. The Superstition Mountains stand eternal, keeping watch over their mysteries, as patient and timeless as the stars above. Sleep peacefully, dreamer, and let the legend of the lost Dutchman's gold guide you gently into slumber's embrace.
The legend of the Pony Express rider's last run. Across the vast expanse of the American frontier, where the land stretched endlessly between the rising and setting sun, there once existed a marvel of speed and courage that lasted only 18 months, yet burned so brightly in memory that it has never been forgotten. This is the story of the Pony Express and of one rider whose final journey became legend. In 1860, when the nation was young and restless, a bold idea took shape. Mail that once took months to travel from Missouri to California would now make the journey in just 10 days. Young men, lightweight and fearless, would ride in relay across 2,000 miles of wilderness, through hostile territory, across desert and mountain, carrying leather pouches filled with letters and news that connected divided country. The advertisement seeking riders was simple and honest. Wanted young, skinny, wiry fellows. Must be expert riders, willing to risk death daily. Orphans preferred. Among those who answered the calls, a young man named William. He was 19 years old, lean as a willow branch, with steady hands and a heart full of the kind of courage that comes from youth and purpose combined. William had grown up on the frontier, could read the weather in the clouds, and knew horses the way some men know books. His route was one of the most challenging sections, running through Nevada territory, where the land could be unforgiving and beautiful in equal measure. 100 miles of desert, mountain passes, and lonely stations where the only sound was the wind singing through the sage. It was autumn when William began what would be his final run. The air had turned crisp, and there was talk of an early winter coming down from the mountains. At the station, the superintendent handed him the mochila, the special leather mail pouch that fit over the saddle. It was lighter than usual that day, just few letters, but among them was something important, news from the east that needed to reach California without delay. William swung onto his horse, a strong buckskin mare named Desert Star, and they set off at a gallop as the sun was climbing into the pale morning sky. The first stations passed without incident. Fresh horses waited, and William would leap from one saddle to another in seconds, the precious mail never touching the ground, then race onward. But as afternoon gave way to evening, the weather began to change. Clouds gathered, dark and heavy, and the temperature dropped like a stone. By the time William reached the mountain pass, snow was falling, soft at first, then harder, until the world became a swirling white mystery. The trail disappeared beneath the snow. Desert Star moved carefully, trusting her rider's guidance, while William strained to see landmarks he knew by heart. The station should have been just ahead, a warm shelter with a fresh horse waiting, but the storm had transformed everything, making the familiar strange. Hours passed. The cold was fierce now, biting through William's layers of clothing. His hands grew numb on the reins, but he kept the mochila pressed close, protecting the mail with his own body heat. Desert Star was tiring, her breath coming in clouds of frost, but she pressed on faithfully, sensing her rider's determination. Some say William could have turned back, could have sheltered, and waited for the storm to pass. But Pony Express riders took an oath, a promise that the mail would go through, no matter what stood in their way. That oath was sacred, a bond stronger than the storm. Just before dawn, when the snow finally began to ease, Desert Star carried William into the next station. The station keeper, who'd been watching through the night with growing worry, ran out to meet them. William handed down the mochila, his movements stiff and slow from the cold, but his mission complete. The mail was dry and safe, every letter accounted for. They say William rested there for 3 days, recovering from that brutal ride. Desert Star was given the finest care, extra oats, and a warm stall, honored as the hero she was. When William was ready to ride again, the story of his journey through the storm had already begun to spread along the trail. The Pony Express itself would not last much longer. The telegraph lines were being strung across the country, carrying messages in an instant, what took riders days to deliver. But in those brief 18 months, riders like William created something that could not be measured in speed or efficiency alone. They proved that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when duty called. They connected a nation through courage and dedication. Today, if you travel through Nevada and cross those mountain passes where William once rode, the land remembers. The wind still carries stories, and on snowy evenings, when the world grows quiet, some travelers report seeing a lone rider moving through the drifts, a buckskin horse, and a determined young man, forever completing that last faithful run. The legend reminds us that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue despite it. The promises kept echo through time, and that sometimes the briefest chapters write the longest-lasting stories. So rest now, peaceful and warm, and let the rhythm of hoofbeats through snow carry you into dreams. The mail has been delivered, the oath fulfilled, and somewhere across the mountains, William and Desert Star ride on, eternal guardians of a promise once made and forever kept. Sleep gently, traveler, beneath the watching stars.
The legend of the Singing River in the heart of Texas, where the land rolls gently and the sky seems to go on forever, there flows a river that holds one of the most haunting and beautiful legends of the Old West. The locals call it the Singing River, though on maps it bears another name. But those who have camped along its banks on quiet nights know why the old name persists, for sometimes, when conditions are just right, the river seems to sing a low melodious hum that rises from the water itself, carrying with it the echo of a love story from long ago. Before the settlers came, before the cowboys and the cattle drives, this land belonged to the Comanche people. Among them lived a young warrior named Running Deer, known throughout the tribe for his skill with horses and his gentle spirit. He could calm the wildest mustang with a whisper, and moved through the prairie grass as silently as morning mist. Running Deer had known white fawns since they were children, racing along the riverbanks and playing in the shade of the cottonwood trees. As they grew, their friendship deepened into something more precious, a love as natural and inevitable as the river flowing to the sea. White Fawn was known for her beautiful voice, and she would sing the old songs of her people, her voice carrying across the water like a blessing. But these were troubled times. Tensions between tribes were growing, and a neighboring band sought to make peace through marriage. Their chief had a son, a fierce warrior named Black Wolf, and he desired White Fawn as his bride. Such a union would bring peace, would stop the conflicts that had claimed too many lives. The elders of White Fawn's tribe saw the wisdom in this alliance. They spoke to her of duty, of the greater good, of how her sacrifice could save many lives. White Fawn listened with a heavy heart, for she loved her people and did not wish to see them suffer. But her heart belonged to Running Deer, as surely as the stars belong to the night sky. Running Deer, learning of the arrangement, went to the council. He spoke of his love for White Fawn, offered to prove himself in any challenge, to ride farther, hunt better, fight more bravely than any man. But the elders were firm. The peace was more important than the desires of two young hearts, no matter how pure their love might be. On the night before White Fawn was to leave with Black Wolf's people, she walked alone the river, to the place where she and Running Deer had spent so many happy hours. The moon was full, turning the water to liquid silver, and she began to sing, pouring all her sorrow and love into the ancient melodies her grandmother had taught her. Running Deer heard her song and came to the river's edge. They stood there together as the water flowed past, eternal and patient. They spoke of memories, of dreams that would never be, of a love that felt stronger than the choice that had been made for them. Some versions of the legend say they made a promise to each other that night, that their spirits would remain by the river forever, waiting and watching. Others say they simply held each other as the moon crossed the sky, finding what comfort they could in those final hours together. When dawn came, White Fawn returned to the village and prepared to leave with Black Wolf. Running Deer watched from a distance as the procession departed, his heart breaking, but his face composed, honoring her choice to do what she believed was right for her people. But White Fawn could not complete the journey. Halfway to Black Wolf's village, she became ill, her spirit seemingly unable to bear the separation from her true love. Despite the medicine woman's herbs and prayers, White Fawn grew weaker each day, fading like a flower pulled from the earth. When word reached Running Deer, he rode without stopping, racing across the prairie faster than he had ever ridden before. But he arrived too late. White Fawn had passed away just hours before, her last words a whispered song, the same melody she had sung by the river that final night. Running Deer's grief was profound and silent. He carried White Fawn's body back to their river, to the place they had loved, and there he buried her beneath the cottonwood trees. The elders say he sat by her grave for 7 days and 7 nights, neither eating nor drinking, simply keeping watch, as she had once watched over the things she loved. On the 8th morning, Running Deer was found lying peacefully beside the grave, his spirit having followed White Fawn's to whatever place awaits beyond this world. The tribe buried him beside her, and the medicine woman sang the old songs, blessing their eternal rest. But the story does not end with sorrow. From that time forward, on certain nights when the moon is full and the air is still, the river begins to sing. It is a sound unlike any other, not quite music, not quite voice, but something in between. A low, melodious hum that seems to rise from the water itself, beautiful and melancholy, like a love song that has no end. Scientists have tried to explain it, speaking of water flowing over particular rock formations, of wind creating acoustic effects in the canyon. But the people who live nearby know better. They know it is White Fawn singing to Running Deer, and Running Deer answering back, their voices carried by the eternal river, together at last in a way they never could be in life. Travelers who camp by the river sometimes report dreams of two young people walking along the banks, hand in hand, their forms shimmering like moonlight on water. They say the dreams are peaceful, filled with a sense of love, so pure it transcends sorrow, a reminder that some bonds cannot be broken by duty or death or time itself. And so the river flows on, singing its ancient song, keeping the legend alive for all who have the patience to listen. It reminds us that love is a force as eternal as water, as constant as the turning of seasons, and that the deepest promises live on, echoing through the years like music that never fades. Close your eyes now and imagine you are resting beside that singing river. Let its gentle melody wash over you, carrying away the worries of the day. Feel the soft grass beneath you and the whisper of the cottonwood leaves above. Somewhere in the distance, two spirits walk together in eternal peace, their love a light that guides all wanderers home. Sleep now, gently cradled by the river's ancient song, protected by a love that time itself cannot diminish. Rest well, dear dreamer, rest well.
The Legend of the Midnight Train. In the lonesome stretches of the American Southwest, where the desert meets the sky and the railroad tracks run straight as an arrow toward the horizon, there exists a legend whispered around campfires for more than 100 years. It is the tale of the Midnight Train, a phantom locomotive that appears on moonless nights, carrying passengers who have long since departed this world, yet still have one more journey to make. The story begins in 1873, when the railroad was still new and precious, a ribbon of steel connecting isolated towns across the vast wilderness. There was a conductor on the line named Samuel Blackwood, a man known for his unwavering dedication and his kindness to every passenger who boarded his train. Samuel believed that every person who climbed aboard was placing their life in his hands, and he took that responsibility more seriously than anything else in the world. Samuel knew every inch of the route by heart. He knew where the tracks curved along the canyon edge, where flash floods could wash out the roadbed, where rock slides might block the rails. His train ran like clockwork, and passengers felt safe knowing Samuel Blackwood was at the controls. One autumn evening, Samuel's train was making its regular run from Santa Fe to Tucson. The passenger cars were full, families heading west to start new lives, an elderly couple going to visit their daughter, whom they had not seen in 3 years. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. As darkness fell, Samuel noticed something unusual. The air felt different, heavy and still. Then, as they rounded a bend, he saw it. A massive rock slide had covered the tracks, tons of stone and earth blocking the way. There was no time to stop, not at the speed they were traveling. In that instant, Samuel had to make a choice. He could try to slow down, but the weight of the fully loaded train would carry them into the rocks regardless, and everyone aboard would perish. Or he could do something desperate, something impossible. He could give the engine everything it had and pray that speed would carry them through. Samuel chose speed. He opened the throttle all the way and the train surged forward like a living thing. His engineer stoked the firebox until it blazed white hot. The train accelerated, faster and faster, the wheels screaming against the rails. The train hit the rock slide with a sound like thunder. For a moment, it seemed to stretch into eternity. Time itself held its breath. And then, impossibly, miraculously, the train burst through, emerging on the other side, still on the rails, still moving. But something had changed. When Samuel looked back at the passenger cars, he could see through them, their forms shimmering like heat waves on summer desert. The passengers sat peacefully, unaware that in that moment of impossible passage, they had crossed a threshold between one world and another. The train continued its journey, pulling into Tucson Station just before midnight. The passengers disembarked, thanking Samuel as always, and walked off into the night. But when the station master came to inspect the train, he found it empty, cold, with no sign that it had run that evening at all. Yet Samuel's regular train was found the next morning, derailed at the rock slide, the wreckage scattered across the desert. Samuel's body was found in the engine cab, his hands still on the throttle, his face peaceful. The strange thing was, there were no passengers, no bodies in the cars. The train had been fully booked, yet everyone had vanished. From that night forward, the legend grew. Railroad workers and desert travelers began reporting sightings of a phantom train that appeared on moonless nights. It would materialize out of the darkness, its headlamp glowing with an otherworldly light, its whistle sounding like a distant memory. The train never stopped at stations, just passed through like a dream. Those who have seen it say the passenger cars are full of people, all sitting peacefully as if on any ordinary journey. And at the controls stands Samuel Blackwood, still faithful to his duty, still ensuring that every soul aboard reaches their destination safely. Some believe the midnight train carries the spirits of those who died far from home, giving them one last journey to the places they loved. Others say it appears to those who are lost in the desert, a sign that help is near. A few claim that if you are standing by the rails when the midnight train passes, you can hear the passengers singing old songs, their voices filled with joy and peace. The legend teaches us that dedication transcends even death, that some promises are so sacred they echo through eternity. Samuel Blackwood chose to save his passengers, and in doing so, became their eternal guardian. On quiet, desert nights, when the stars are bright and the air is still, if you stand near the old railroad tracks, you might hear it, the distant sound of a steam whistle, the rhythmic clacking of wheels on rails, growing closer and then fading away. And if you are very fortunate, you might catch a glimpse of the midnight train, passing through the darkness, carrying its precious cargo safely home. So close your eyes now and listen to the gentle rhythm of train in the distance. Feel yourself rocking gently with its motion, safe and protected on a journey through the night. Samuel Blackwood is at the controls, watching over every passenger, ensuring everyone reaches their destination. Let the sound of the rails lull you into peaceful sleep. The midnight train rolls on through eternity, a promise kept, a duty fulfilled, a legend that whispers of devotion that knows no end. Sleep peacefully now, traveler, and dream of journeys safely made.
A legend of the desert rose. In the vast Sonoran desert, where the saguaro cacti stand like silent sentinels, and the sand stretches endlessly beneath an infinite sky, their blooms a legend as beautiful and mysterious as the land itself. This is the story of Rosa Maria, known throughout the territory as the Desert Rose, a woman whose kindness transformed a harsh landscape into a place of hope and healing. Rosa Maria came to the Arizona Territory in 1868, traveling with a wagon train that had endured hardship after hardship, crossing the unforgiving terrain. She was a healer, trained in the old ways by her grandmother in Mexico, who had taught her which plants could cure fever, which roots could ease pain, and which flowers held the power to mend broken spirits. When the wagon train reached the small settlement of Esperanza, little more than a handful of adobe buildings clustered around a struggling well, Rosa Maria decided to stay. The town needed her, and she needed a place to call home. She built a small house on the edge of the settlement, with a garden that seemed impossible in such a barren place. But Rosa Maria had learned secrets from her grandmother about coaxing life from stubborn earth. She knew how to find water where others saw only dust, how to shelter delicate plants from the scorching sun, and how to speak to growing things in a language older than words. Within a year, her garden was a miracle, blooming with herbs and flowers that should not have survived, each plant serving a purpose in her healing work. People came from miles around when they were sick or injured. Rosa Maria never turned anyone away, regardless of whether they could pay. Cowboys with broken bones, settlers with desert fever, children with mysterious ailments, even Apache warriors who had heard of her gifts and came in peace, seeking her help. She treated them all with the same gentle care, asking only that they take what they learned back to their communities. The settlement grew around her presence. Where Rosa Maria lived, people wanted to stay. Her garden became a gathering place, a spot of green beauty in the brown desert, where neighbors would meet and talk, where children would play, where hope seemed to bloom as abundantly as her flowers. But the desert is an unpredictable place, and the year 1876 brought a drought more severe than anyone could remember. The well at Esperanza began to fail, dropping lower each day. Water became precious, rationed carefully, and people spoke in worried whispers about having to abandon the town. Rosa Maria watched her garden begin to wither despite her careful tending. The plants she needed for healing were dying, and without them, she could not help those who depended on her. She spent long nights considering what to do, praying for guidance. One morning, just before dawn, Rosa Maria walked out into the desert, carrying only a small pack and her grandmother's worn journal of plant knowledge. She told no one where she was going. She simply walked into the wilderness, following some instinct that pulled her deeper into the wild country. 3 days passed, then 4, then a week. The people of Esperanza grew worried. Search parties went out, but found no trace of her. The desert, it seemed, had claimed the Desert Rose, and the settlement mourned the loss of the woman who had given them so much. But on the 8th morning, something extraordinary happened. A spring began to flow at the edge of town, exactly where Rosa Maria's garden had been. Clear, sweet water bubbled up from deep in the earth, more water than the old well had ever provided. And around the spring, flowers began to bloom, wild roses, unlike any that grew naturally in the desert, their petals the exact shade of Rosa Maria's favorite shawl. The people rejoiced at the miracle, but wondered at its meaning. Some said Rosa Maria had found an underground river and sacrificed herself to open its path to the surface. Others believed she had made a bargain with the spirit of the desert itself, trading her mortal life to save the town she loved. The Apache elders who visited the spring spoke of ancient legends, of those rare souls who love the land so deeply they become part of it, their essence transforming into the very things that give life. The spring never failed, not through the driest summers or the harshest years. The town of Esperanza flourished, and travelers would stop to fill their canteens and rest in the shade of the roses that grew in wild profusion round the water. And sometimes on quiet evenings, when the desert air is soft and the sun is setting in shades of rose and gold, people report seeing a woman in the distance, tending the wild roses, her form shimmering like heat rising from sand. She never comes close enough to speak to, but those who see her say they feel a profound sense of peace, of being cared for and protected. The roses that grow by the spring possess unusual properties. Healers who gather them find they work better than any medicine, soothing pain and speeding recovery in ways that seem to defy explanation. Some say each bloom contains a piece of Rosa Maria's healing gift, her final gift to the people and the land she loved. The legend reminds us that true love requires sacrifice, that the greatest among us give everything to help others flourish, and that some spirits are so generous they continue to nurture and heal long after they have departed this world. Rosa Maria became what she had always been in her heart, a source of life and beauty in a harsh land, forever blooming in the place she called home. So rest now, and imagine yourself beside that miraculous spring, surrounded by wild roses that smell of hope and kindness. Feel the cool water on your hands, hear the gentle sound of it flowing endlessly from the earth. Rosa Maria watches over this place still, ensuring that all who come here find what they need, whether it is water for the body or peace for the soul. Close your eyes and let the desert rose's gift of healing wash over you. Sleep equally and peacefully, knowing that love this pure never truly fades, but transforms into something eternal, something that continues to give and nurture across the years. Sleep well, dear traveler, cradled by the desert's ancient magic, protected by a love that bloomed into legend.
The legend of the guardian of Sunset Mesa. High above the painted desert, where the wind whispers through red rock canyons and eagles soar on invisible currents, there stands a mesa that has watched over the land since time beyond memory. The native peoples called it the place where sky touches earth, but settlers came to know it as Sunset Mesa. for the way the dying light set its cliffs ablaze with colors that seemed to come from another world entirely. And it is here that one of the gentlest legends of the Old West was born. In the 1880s, a young Apache boy named Nahale lived with his grandfather in the shadow of the great Mesa. Nahale's name meant one who walks in beauty, and he lived up to it in every way. While other boys his age practiced with bows and learned the ways of warriors, Nahale spent his days exploring the Mesa, learning the paths of animals, and listening to the stories the wind carried through the canyons. His grandfather was a wise elder, one of the last who remembered the old ways before the world began to change so rapidly. Each evening, as the sun painted the Mesa in gold and crimson, the old man would tell Nahale stories of how the earth and sky were connected, how everything in nature had a spirit and purpose, and how those who listened carefully could hear the voice of the land itself. Nahale listened with his whole heart. He learned to read the language of clouds, to understand the messages carried by birds, to feel the moods of the desert in the movement of sand and wind. The Mesa became his teacher, and he spent countless hours sitting on its heights, watching the world spread out below him like a living tapestry. As years passed, Nahale grew into a young man, but he never lost his gentle nature or his deep connection to the Mesa. When tensions between the Apache and the settlers grew dangerous, when violence threatened to consume the land, Nahale would climb to the highest point of the Mesa and sit in meditation, sending prayers for peace into the wind. People began to notice something remarkable. On days when Nahale sat upon the Mesa, conflicts seemed to ease. Hostile parties would find themselves talking instead of fighting. Lost travelers would suddenly know which direction to go. Injured animals would appear at the Mesa's base and be found healed days later. It was as if the young man's presence brought a blessing to the entire region. Nahale's grandfather told him that he had been chosen by the Mesa itself, that his pure heart and peaceful spirit made him a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. The old man taught him that this was both a gift and a responsibility, that Nahale must always use his connection to help others, never for his own benefit. When Nahale's grandfather passed away peacefully one winter evening, the young man grieved deeply, but understood what he must do. He made his home on the Mesa itself, in a small shelter built into the rocks, and dedicated his life to being its guardian. He would watch over the land, help those who were lost, and maintain the delicate balance between all who lived in the desert's embrace. Travelers crossing the territory began to speak of the guardian of Sunset Mesa. They told stories of being hopelessly lost in the desert, only to see a figure standing on the Mesa's height, pointing the way to safety. Cowboys spoke of terrible storms that would split and pass around the Mesa, as if guided by invisible hands, leaving the area below untouched, while lightning raged in the distance. Settlers told of finding fresh water in drought years, always near the Mesa, always appearing just when it was needed most. Nahale lived this way for many years, asking nothing for himself, content to serve as the Mesa's guardian. He aged gracefully, his hair turning white as clouds, his face becoming as weathered and beautiful as the rocks he loved. He welcomed all who came peacefully, sharing his simple food and offering wisdom to those who sought it. One spring morning when the wildflowers were blooming in impossible profusion, and the air was sweet with desert perfume, hunters found Nahale sitting at the highest point of the mesa, facing the rising sun. He passed away sometime during the night, peacefully, with a gentle smile on his face. His body was positioned as if in meditation, his hands resting calmly, his spirit clearly at peace. The Apache people came and performed sacred ceremonies. They said that Nahale had not truly died, but had become one with the mesa itself, his spirit merging with the ancient stone, his essence spreading through every canyon and crevice. They left him there, in the place he loved, and let the wind and sun take him back into the earth. From that day forward, the legends grew even stronger. People still report seeing a figure on the mesa at sunset, standing watch over the desert below. Hikers who lose their way speak of feeling a gentle presence guiding them, a sense of being watched over with kindness. In times of trouble, those who climb the mesa often find clarity and peace, as if the stone itself is sharing wisdom accumulated over centuries. The mesa remains a sacred place, respected by all who know its story. Birds circle its heights in patterns that seem almost deliberate. The light that falls on its cliffs at sunset seems brighter, more beautiful than anywhere else in the desert. And on very still evenings, when the world holds its breath between day and night, people swear they can hear it, a sound like gentle humming, like an ancient lullaby sung by the stones themselves. The legend teaches us that true guardianship is born of love, not duty, that those who give themselves fully to protecting and nurturing the world around them become eternal parts of it. Nahale found his purpose not in conflict or ambition, but in quiet service, in being present and watchful, in maintaining harmony between earth and sky. So close your eyes now and imagine yourself resting at the base of Sunset Mesa, protected by ancient cliffs that glow with the day's last light. Feel the stone's warmth beneath you, solid and eternal. Nahale watches spill, a gentle guardian, ensuring that all who come here find peace and safety. Let the mesa's ancient strength flow through you, calming your mind and easing your body into rest. The guardian of Sunset Mesa keeps his eternal vigil, and under his watchful presence, nothing can harm you, nothing can disturb your rest. Sleep peacefully now, wrapped in the desert's embrace, protected by love that has become part of the very earth itself. Dream of wide skies and painted rocks.